This is my mate Terry, the big player.
Ah, big bore.
Hi, this is Trev and welcome to my blog. Welcome to part 16 of my Bedford CA van restoration. Have you missed me? I know that some of you have. I had hoped to update the blog about 3 weeks ago, but the truth is I've been extremely busy with various occasions such as my wife's birthday and my son's birthday, and they have more birthdays than the Queen. I also went away for a nice weekend with my parents to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary, which was really nice, folks, so thanks for that. It was a great weekend. So the truth is, I've probably only spent about 2 days working on the van in the last 3 weeks, because I've been, doing boring stuff like going to work to earn the money to pay the bills and all that, so that's what I've been up to. Anyway, back to this blog. I know the last time I went on some great big spiel about I had to build this gas box and I wasn't going to show it on the blog just in case I kind of incriminated myself, but I've had a change of heart. It was such hard work to do, and I've really had to do a lot of research to do this, and it is my blog. This is my blog. It's not really a how-to. Please be inspired by what I do, but as they say in some blogs, don't do this at home, folks. So that's my disclaimer. Anyway, this blinking gas box was a real nightmare. It really was, and I must admit I've had some real low moments while doing it. All around me are familiar faces, and I've also had some really mad moments while doing it. Well, I gotta tell you, Doc, when you see that little I also realise, of course, that by not leaving it in on the blog, I'm missing a trick, because somebody that's really clued up is going to tell me that I've done it right, or if I've made a mistake, they're going to let me know, and that'll be really helpful. So I'm not going to ramble on anymore. Just a quick thank you to all those people that have contacted me and commented on the last blog, and hope you enjoyed part 16. I've just made up this mounting plate for my water tank. I've made this up like this so that I can cheat some extra space out of the van, because the floor level is here. This is where the floor level would normally be, and this cheats some extra depth out of the van so that the seat can be mounted on the top, and it gives you a bit of clearance for your head so your head isn't rubbing against the van roof. Otherwise you just wouldn't be able to sit in there. So this is what I've made up to do the job. Only just about fits in. The tank just about squeezes in between the chassis members. I didn't really allow enough space. We're only talking millimetres of tolerance here, and I made this plate up dead square and offered it up to the van. Of course the van's not quite dead square, so I've had to grind a couple of millimetres off here and there just to make it slide in. I'll go and get the tank now, see how well it fits in the tray. Now I'm quite happy that my water tank holder will fit between the chassis rails. I've gotten it all spot welded together now. I've also anticipated that the exhaust will lie a lot closer to this now than it would have the original floor, so I've welded some exhaust heat shield studs to it before I assembled it, so I spot welded those on with my tool. Nice job. These are for the tank mounts. Tank's in there now, as you can see. It's all ready to go. So what I need to do next is drill some holes through this lip and secure it to the chassis rails that I've made, and that'll be this job finished. Another one off the list. I've drilled the holes through to secure the water tank tray to the chassis members. There's a large chassis member that runs from here up to the front of the cab, and this supports the catering conversion. So I've taken the opportunity to make an extra support up to help support the seat. This will also help support something else that I want to do. I want to mount the pump for the coffee machine up here, out of the way. So the pump's going to go there, and the water filter is going to go just behind it. This is taking up no space out of the van. It's an ideal spot for it to go. So that's what I'm going to do next.
So now I'm confident that that tank will fit in under that rail nicely. What I'll do is I'll take it apart again, put the tank away somewhere safe, and put the rail back in, put the seat back on and start fitting the rear seat belts, knowing that everything else is going to fit. I've got the passenger side seat refitted, and for very good reason. I know it's not a legal requirement to have seat belts fitted to a vehicle that originally didn't have seat belts fitted, but this is what I'm doing. Tedious and boring is two words that springs to mind, because nothing's been more tedious and boring than this job. It's taken me a whole day just to fit the passenger side seat belt. Let's take a closer look. I've raided my Ford Focus donor car for the seat belts, and these belts seem to fit as well as anything else I would have thought. I've used the whole kit off the Ford Focus, just modified some of the fittings to allow it to be fitted to the van. It's worked really well because it's allowed me to sculpt the belt around the seat so that the belt doesn't chafe the seat anywhere. And I've got the shoulder height adjustment retained as well, which works well. You sit in the seat, it does seem to hold you in really well, so I'm quite happy with the way this job's turned out, even though it's taken forever. Got the driver's side to do next, and of course the rear seats to do after that, so I'll do the driver's side next. There we go, driver's side seat belt now fitted. Two major issues I've had with this. The most obvious one being that there was never a seatbelt fitted to this vehicle in the first place, so there's no anchorage point, and the CA doesn't lend itself particularly well to having seatbelts fitted because it just wasn't a priority in its day. So, like I said, the most obvious thing is you have to create something that's going to be strong enough to take the anchorage points. Some of the panel work's pretty flimsy, so I've had to back it up with some nice big plates from behind, and I've used plenty of M10s to hold everything together. Again, fitting the belt stalk latch locking mechanism. What the hell do you call this thing? This thing here. Fitting this, big problems. What do you mount it to? Well, you've got the seat box. Well, there's no way I'm going to mount that to the seat box because it's just too flimsy. If I mount it to the seat, then the seat's just going to break free and you and the seat are going to go crashing into the steering wheel. My gearbox tunnel is certainly not strong enough to take anything. The floor's just too far away and too under the seat, so I've had to mount another chassis rail in, which was straightforward enough, to be honest, and make a nice strong bracket up to the thingy. Yeah, it's okay. The number two issue I've had, talking about I had two issues, is the seatbelt just isn't quite long enough. This didn't really become that apparent until towards the end, and I had this mounted a lot lower down, and so I've had to bring it up. That's why it looks as high as it does. But apart from looking a bit naff, it does actually work exceptionally well, and it's very comfortable. If you ratchet that seat right forward, then you've got no problems with the belt still reaching it, and you can still lean forward without the belt locking out. So that's it finished. Onto the rears now. I've got the first of the rear seat belts fitted. I've had a slightly easier time of it this time round, as the Peugeot seats that I've used for the rear have already got seat belt stalks already mounted to the seat themselves. this eradicates the need to make 2 extra mountings. When the belt isn't in use, it will remain in this stalk all of the time, and then when a passenger sits in the seat needing to use a belt, it'll just simply click into that stalk that side. The other side, however, is going to throw up a few more challenges, as I've got my flimsy catering box the other side, which will be woefully inadequate to mount a seat belt to. So I've come up with another idea. When I took the rear Peugeot seats and seat belts, I took all 3 seat belts from the car, and I'm glad I did, because I'm going to use this roof mounted type seat belt. It just mounts with one large M12 in the middle, and that takes care of all the mountings. I've had to make up a bit of a clever mounting bracket though that I intend to weld inside the van. This is my mounting point I've made out of some pretty thick box section, and just one big M12 in the middle. This just slides in and out to grip the belt. What I'm really fortunate about is the fact that the belt will reach from the rear doors all the way over to the seat and still be used as a seat belt with plenty of slack to spare. So I can mount my bracket that I've made up to the rear door support structure, which is very strong. It's probably one of the stronger parts of the rear of the van, and this saves me having to make up anything else. The beauty of this is, if this belt gets in the way, it's hardly ever going to be needed anyway, and if it does get in the way, then I can just simply undo one M12, slide the seat belt out, this bracket will be tucked up out of the way anyway, and I can just use it as and when it's needed. There we go, there's the bracket welded in. I managed to get it into the corner of the door. Because of the angle of the roof, it means that the seat belt is more or less pointing into the centre of the van, which means that the belt will now be well out of the way of the open door, which is what I was worried about. Very neatly tucked away. Really pleased with that. It's worked really well. Plenty of slack on that belt as well. Loads of slack. Perfect. Well, this brings the seatbelt fitting to a conclusion. I got my old mate Steeley round for a cup of tea and a biscuit.
Hello.
Oh, do you know what? I don't know if I want this. Do you want this biscuit, Steeley?
Yeah. Say you've given it the birds.
Old Steeley's popped round to pick a couple of airbags up. But they are live, Steeley, so you've got to be quite careful when you're taking this apart.
Don't worry, Trev. I wouldn't be that lucky.
This is going to be my gas locker external access door. It doesn't need to be very big because we haven't got to lift the bottle in and out, because of course it's a self-fill bottle. So what I've done is I've hacked this section out of the side of a Citroen Zara or something like that. It's irrelevant really what it was out of, but it seemed to be a nice uniform size that will fit where I want it to fit, big enough to get me arm and hand in to isolate the bottle if needed. Even though you haven't actually got to do that, I think it'd probably be best to do that whilst driving the van around. So the access door actually needs to be lockable,
and I thought, well, I'd just get a locking petrol flap. Could I find a locking petrol flap that was appropriate? No, I couldn't. I could find some locking petrol flaps, but none of them had the keys. So what I've done is, like I've already said, I've got this flap, which is going to be a door. It may need a vent in it as well, depending on which advice you look at. Some are saying you need a vent and others are saying no, you definitely don't. So more confusion thrown into the mix. So what I've done is I found a Mitsubishi Shogun with a locking petrol flap, no key, but I found a Mitsubishi car with a key. So what I've done is I've taken the lock off the flap. I've cut a section of the flap out as well, so I can use this as a template to cut my hole. And I've taken the lock apart and I've modified inside the lock so that it accepts the key from this car, and as you can see, it all works well now. So I have appropriate locking door for my LPG bottle. Here's the lock fitted to the petrol flap. Opens really well now. Lock's fully operational. It must be locked as part of the specification to be a gas locker, so it locks now. I've also trimmed the steel work around the edge, even all the way round, and I'll make a hole the same size, probably joggle an edge into it around the quarter panel, and then I can weld it to the quarter panel. It will become part of the van then. Driver's side rear, this is the petrol flap, so that I can fill the car up with petrol and access the LPG fill point, which is going to be fitted just above the fuel filler. This is the area I'm going to fit the LPG locker box access flap. So there'll be a flap in there so that I can access the top of the bottle to turn the gas off from the tap that's on top of the bottle. So with a locker box access door now welded in, the next job I've had to do is to build this flat mounting plate that will mount to the gas box, to the locker box itself. I've started building my locker box and I've built the mounting plate that will go up against the mounting plate that's welded inside the van. I'll show you what it looks like. I'll just lift it in quickly. We'll bolt around there and we'll be sealed in to create a gas tight seal. The next thing I've got to do is make some modifications to this box because the regulator sticks out further than the box. I couldn't make the box any bigger because the box has got to negotiate the wheel box of the van. So nothing like doing awkward jobs, I'm full of these. So this will be the next job, will be to enlarge this box. I've made some sections up already down here, so this is my box extension. So that'll be my next job. Here is my completed gas locker. It's all finished, all the welds are done. There's not a flat side on it, so I can't stand it up. But what I'll do, I'll give you a guided tour. This is the open-ended side of the locker that faces into the van, which will have the door on it. This is just purely so that you can lift the bottle in and out. I've made up this clamping system to neatly clamp the bottle to the bottom of the gas locker. There's no chance of it moving around. I've made some nice decent clamps which will clamp down into these threaded holes. This recess here is for the LPG fill bayonet to fit through. It's recessed in here because this recess meets neatly against the inner wing, and it will be sealed between this gas locker side and the inner wing to form a gas tight seal. This hole here is to allow the gas to escape, because the locker has to be vented at the lowest part, but it mustn't be vented through the floor because the cylinder could get in the way of the floor vent. If I follow that floor vent round, this is what it looks like. This fits beneath the floor level of the van, so if any gas were to escape, it will come out of this hole, which has got a vent over it. This hole faces rearwards as well, so that anything flying up in the road can't go up inside the hole potentially and damage the bottle. 1,000 to 1 chance, I'm sure, but this is something else I've had to think about. Obviously this is vented, slatted grill type thing, stop anything from going up in there as well. Roll it over, we can see the back edge. This is the piece I was talking about that the bayonet fitting fits into. It's also bolted through here and here to really secure it to the inside of the van so it can't move. We've got our ring of bolts around the access panel, and we've got our extra piece welded on for the regulator to sit into. You remember, I couldn't make it the same width all the way down because of the wheel box in the van, so this really is a custom fit. Let's get it in the van and see what it looks like in the van. Before I show you the completed gas locker, I'll just shoot some of the inside of the van before it goes in, just to show you the inner wing. This is where the fill point goes through. We've got a big hole now in the floor, and this is where the gas will be vented to in case of a leak. Also got a hole here. This is a drain hole to allow any water that should get inside the locker, which is pretty unlikely, but if it did, then it can just drain out through the floor simply. This will all be sealed round, gas tight seals. There we go, there's the box lifted in. There's the ring of bolts around the access flap, and I've attached the fill pipe. And that goes through the inner wing to the bayonet fitting the other side, which I'll just show you. There we go, there's the bayonet fitting. This is from the petrol flap side. Bayonet fitting goes right through the inner wing and through the gas locker to the other side. Comes with this nice little cover which just pushes on to protect the fitting. So here we go, I've just lifted the bottle into the gas locker and secured it into the base with the clamps. You can clearly see the door behind and the taps in with easy reach of that door. I've also screwed the regulator into the bottle and attached the fill pipe. I've changed my mind from solid pipe, which is what I was going to use, and I've gone for flexi all the way round. This is the latest spec LPG pipe as used to convert cars to LPG, and it comes with these special faro ends that clamp onto the pipe. You have to tighten them up to a specific torque onto the pipe, and then that fits straight into the regulator. So I'll have it coming off the regulator, swirl it round inside this box, and it'll go
up into that corner, through some kind of plastic fitting which I'll seal round so that no gas can possibly escape, and then it'll go round to the coffee machine. We've already talked about it being bolted around there, and this is the vent that comes straight through the floor. You can just about see the vent behind there, so that any gas that escapes into the locker can vent straight out of there. With the door on and a good seal around the door, there'll be no gas escaping anywhere else except out for that bottom vent. Obviously there'll be a floor in here as well. So this is what my gas locker looks like with its door panel bolted on the outside. I didn't put all 28 bolts in, I just used 4 so you can get the idea. I think it looks a neat enough job. I've still got a bit of a gap I can get through. My shoulders fit between this gap quite nicely, so I'll still be able to access the rear of the van quite well. I'd just like to briefly say that on about 3 occasions when I was really stuck to know what to do exactly with the gas bottle, I had a couple of ideas in my mind, but I didn't quite know which way to go. I actually phoned the guys at Gasit, their technical department, and on each occasion I phoned up, they couldn't have been more helpful. They weren't rushing me off the phone, and they were talking through things. They were listening to what I was saying, and they were giving me their best opinion, bearing in mind they can't actually see what I'm doing, but they couldn't have been any more helpful, and that means a lot to me. And if anyone else was thinking of installing something similar in their vehicle, then give Gasit a ring. They're top chaps. With the gas locker as far as the line as I can get it for now, I'm going to turn my attention to a new job. I'm going to start mounting the fuel tank into the back of the van. I'm just taking some quick footage of the rear of the chassis before I start mounting it, so I've got a history of what it looked like beforehand. I'm going to be using the Focus fuel tank from the donor car, and I bought some new straps off eBay because the old ones were rusted right through. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to mount this yet, as the tank was mounted in the Focus, I believe, if I remember correctly, with this fuel neck facing rearwards. So I've got to negotiate my chassis and my gas tank now, because obviously it fits underneath the van, so I'm going to have to negotiate my vent for the gas tank and the chassis and the suspension and everything else, and bring it round. So this is the next challenge, mounting the fuel tank. I've got the tank straps into position. The straps that I ordered off eBay weren't quite the right ones. I think they might have been off a Focus ST tank. So what I had to do is cut a small section out and re-weld it there, but no big deal. What I've made up for the other side is this framework. I used an old computer workstation, cut it all up, welded it together, make this framework. Now the reason I've made this framework is because the tank would normally be compressed under a boot floor, which I haven't got, so I've had to make this framework up that squashes the straps against the tank, holds it secure. This framework doesn't support the weight of the tank in any way, but what it does do is stop the tank from hopping up in the air if I was to go over a bump. I'll put some 3mm foam rubber between these straps and the tank to give it some cushioning, but this should work pretty well. I've got the petrol tank mocked up. It's just held to the chassis with a few cable ties at the moment, but it's in a fairly nice position, and I'm going to just leave it like this so that I can make some sort of filler neck up to connect it to this rubber pipe under here that connects directly to the tank. This neck comes out just above the chassis rail. The original Bedford fuel tank rubber neck would have come out just above the chassis rail opposite end of the van, of course, on the passenger side. And so you're not talking much of a distance between the chassis rail and the original steel floor, which creates a bit of an issue because you haven't got much of a fall on the pipe. You've literally got, like I say, from the floor to the chassis rail. You can just about see the rubber pipe sticking out over there. Now what I was going to use was the original Focus fuel filler pipe, and this is the remains of it. It's pretty rotten actually. All these Mark 1s were made out of mild steel, which has just been galvanized, so as soon as the galvanized coating starts to fail, they just rot like mad. And this is actually full of holes, but what I do like about it is the fact that the filler cap seals completely on the end of the neck. You've also got this one-way valve that goes on the very end of the neck that goes into the tank to stop any petrol from splashing back up. Like I say, this is also completely sealed when the cap's in. I quite like this as opposed to the old-fashioned stuff where the petrol is just going to slosh out all over the place. The other issue I've got is this cap's absolutely huge on this Mark 1 Focus, and this makes the fall even less when it's in this hole. So I went down my local breaker's yard today and I was looking to see if I could find a less rusty pipe, and they were all about the same as what I had, but I looked at a Focus Mark 2 and didn't have any rust on it at all. It was pretty grubby, and I thought, wow, that looks fantastic condition. I'll take this one off and use this one. It wasn't until I got it off that I realised that it's made out of stainless steel, and as I've got to cut it and weld it back together again to complete my modification, this poses a few problems for me because I'm not used to welding stainless steel. I've been looking into it, and there's a couple of different grades, and depending on the grade is what kind of rod you use, so I'm not sure what to do really. What I could do is actually cut some strips out of the pipe and make up my own welding rods. I might have a go at that, but whatever happens, at the end of the day, I've only stand to lose this pipe if I mess it all up. So nothing ventured, nothing gained and all that. I was a bit of a clot really. I managed to break the cap off as I was taking it off. I was a bit stuck for time, I was rushing, and I bust the end of the cap off. Bit of a brute there, but there you go. So let's see how I get on with this. Well, the stainless steel welding didn't go to plan. Had mixed results, but I certainly wasn't prepared to try and weld the pipe up with the results I was getting, because the welds were going to be very porous. This was for a number of reasons really. You need pure acetylene with a welding plant, which I found out since, and mine's like a propane acetylene mix. So I've given up. I'm not going to persevere because I hardly ever need to weld stainless steel. So what I've done is I've bought some 25mm internal diameter fuel pipe. I didn't realise until I was doing this that you couldn't use something like radiator hose for this job, because petrol pipe is special pipe. It doesn't break down, and also it's anti-static. So this is something new I've learned anyway. And I only needed this much pipe to complete the project. So I've got the Focus Mark 1 tank end pipe. I've got the Focus Mark 2 one-way valve, just cut off the end with a one-way valve in it. Then I've got our 25mm pipe, and then the neck, and the same with the breather pipe. My pipe was 27mm, and the petrol hose is 25, so it's a dead tight fit on there, but I managed to squeeze it over. But this is going to work fine. Had a rummage through me drawers, and I found this old exhaust clamp that's never been used before, so it's in great condition. This fits the neck really well, and what I've done is I've made up a little bracket that I've welded to the inner wing, and when it's bolted up it bites into the bracket just there, fits perfectly like a glove, and it's super strong. It's not going to move anywhere, and it makes a real nice job of it. Let's see what it looks like on.
So there we go, there's the neck bolted in place. I've got the old original Mark 1 neck that I'll offer it next to it so that you can see the size difference. It's so much smaller, this Mark 2 neck. The Mark 1 being so big and bulky around the top would have meant that I'd have had to mount it far lower in the flap hole, which would have reduced the fall.
A quick shot from underneath to show the fuel filler neck in situ. The breather pipe is facing in the same position that it was on the Focus so that it can do its job as a breather. That little bit of flexi pipe that I put in there is meant that the pipe sits where it wants to because it's got a bit of flex, and nothing's under strain, everything fits really well. My clamp around the neck's holding it really firmly at the cap end, and yeah, it fits really well, this does. It's turned out quite well, this job. It's got a reasonable fall on it. Certainly as good as the original van would have had. Nothing like what the Focus would have, but it's got that non-return valve in it, and also the cap's completely sealed into the neck, so I can't see there being any problems with this job at all. Now that I'm happy with my fuel filler neck, I can turn my attention to attaching the tank to the chassis. I've made these L-shaped brackets up. I'm going to weld these to the chassis. I'm going to also make up another little bracket that will weld to this rail, and then I'll bolt it through. The reason I've done this is because I don't want this to become part of the van. I want it separate. The main reason being I can unbolt it and give it a good rub down and a good paint, and it's not going to be part of the van. It's not going to corrode because I can't get to it. Same the other side. Make a bracket in between there and the shocker rail. I'll mount it there. I'm going to make sure I can get the tank absolutely on the level before I finalise the brackets as well, so that it's in a nice level position. All four corners have now had their mountings fabricated and welded into place. I used a spirit level on the underside of the fuel tank to make sure that it was level. If I need to remove the fuel tank, including the top framework, then I can undo the whole tank by removing these 4 M8s from each corner, and the whole lot will drop away. However, if I just want to drop the tank down for any reason, I just remove the strap mounts as you would do on the Ford Focus. The 3 mounts, and then the tank can drop down, leaving this framework still attached to the van. Well, that really is all we got time for. Thank you very much for watching. The next major project on the van will be to construct a framework that's going to support the awning over the catering conversion. And when that nitty-gritty job has been finally done, then I'll be back onto the mechanical, and hopefully I'll be finally able to get that engine fired up. So until then, it's been great to spend some time with you, and I'll catch you in part 17. So, bye for now.
Save giving it the birds.
You gotta save it a bit more behind, don't you? That's it, yeah. Oh, you say, oh yeah, save giving it.
Yeah, save giving it the birds.
Then take a bite out of it.
Oh.
No, you can't do it all in one.
Do you reckon I'd be any good in films?
No.